speaking to the quality of Justice c0rruption's character and also her exemplary career on the bench. She has risen all the way to the Supreme Court, and it's definitely something that should be lauded. Now, the appointment has caused issues in discourse, but not the appointment of Justice c0rruption, and not about her character, but about her swearing in before confirmation by the Senate. Now, she was sworn in the presence of the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, who is going to then perform a screening for her after her swearing in. Do you think that the swearing in by the president was rushed or improper?
What you are suggesting now is that what people are saying, that they should have asked her to wait until the Supreme Court confirms before she was being, administered under oath to take over the post. If that did not happen, she would still be the acting as the most senior, judge on the bench. She will still be acting as the acting Chief Justice of the Federation. Well, all these are semantics as far as I'm concerned. There is no impediment of any constitutional provisions that says a CJ cannot be sworn in by the president. After all, the president is the appointing, under the Constitution, the president is the appointing officer. The Senate is only to confirm or reject. And if they reject, it will still take another time, he will be brought back. So I don't see any fundamental infringement of the Constitution.
Yeah, sir.
If people feel that way, I cannot. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, sir, because you said it's semantics, but I was asking specifically about the Senate President being at the swearing in when his duty as the head of the legislative arm of government is to screen the Chief Justice of Nigeria, is one of his duties. Do you believe that the separation of government, do you believe that's semantics, separation of the judiciary, the executive and the legislative body? You think that's just semantics, or is it improper that the Senate President was there?
I use the word because the Constitution did not say the period of time the Senate President will confirm what has been done by the presidency. So if the President appoints, who has the right under the law to do so, the confirmation can come 2 months, 3 months. There's nothing wrong in that. It has nothing to do with the appointment. If the Senate is not ready to confirm, then it will give reasons, and those reasons will be looked into. But its duty is only to confirm. So that's why I say semantic. It's not it doesn't touch any legality or illegality.
All right, then. So let's talk about the urgency of reforms, especially when we look at the 2027 general elections approaching. There have been calls for expedited judicial reforms. But when what specific ones do you believe are most critical to ensure that the judiciary can effectively and impartially handle election-related disputes? Because it's the one thing that we always see make its way even down to the Supreme Court, especially with the backlog of cases that we have. It's something that has been called for so that by the time we get to 2027, we don't have that issues. If you could speak to what particular reforms you should start with, what would it be?
The question of allowing the Supreme Court to sit on appeals on gubernatorial matters is a creation of the Supreme Court itself. They are now crying over what they had done themselves. The Constitution says, the 1999 Constitution says, that if there is an election, the appeal ends at the Court of Appeal. But my good friend, late Katsina Alu, when he was the CJ and head of the judiciary, decided to alter, to change the Constitution because of the case in Sokoto, I remember very well, where it was being rumored that the judges in Sokoto State have taken money to confirm, especially Salami's tenure, to confirm whether the Sokoto gubernatorial election was valid or not. Now, I discovered that the former CJ was crying over split make when he said that the Nigerian judiciary is the most overworked judiciary in the world. That is wrong. It's a self-inflicted injury. They inflicted injury themselves. They wanted power. Actually, they would not have been in this position. They will have only been dealing with the appeal from the Supreme Court, from the Court of Appeal at the Court of First Instance. Now, they are now finding now that they are handling almost 70, 80 appeals from 36 states gubernatorial election. So they should not be crying. I have always said it, and I'll continue to say it, that until that part of the Constitution is restored, and the only way to restore it, can have a constitutional court that will be the appellate court's duty for all election matters, it should all end at the Constitutional Court, so that the Supreme Court will not be bothered. Because when you see the damage it has done to litigation in Nigeria generally, you will find a litigant in the Supreme Court waiting for 15, 16 years to hear his appeal heard, just because politicians and their gangster way of doing things have taken over the Supreme Court. Between the period that Katsina Alu changed the law and now, the number of litigations that have gone to the Supreme Court has eroded not only the integrity of the Supreme Court, especially within many bipartisan or non-partisan people, but I can assure you that if Nigeria has a constitutional court that determines all election petitions, the end of all election petitions will end with the Constitutional Court. And the Supreme Court will not be bothered by all these small matters that now has taken over the whole of the judiciary. My advice is that an amendment, because the amendment was done by the Supreme Court itself, by the Judicial Service Commission, it was taken around all the 36 states. Why not do the same thing and restore, either before the creation of the Constitutional Court, restore the former provisions of the 1999 Constitution that gubernatorial election matters should end at the Court of Appeal. Because they are matters of facts, and even if they are matters of law, once the judiciary takes place, the important thing is that judgment of facts given by two concurrent courts, the Supreme Court has nothing to say about it again. If the tribunal says, oh, the facts are clear, you won the election, the Court of Appeal says the facts are clear, you won the election, what does the Supreme Court want to do on those facts? So my advice is that we either amend the Constitution to provide for a constitutional court as the terminal end of all election matters. Leave the Supreme Court alone from all these matters. The integrity of the Supreme Court will stand intact, not from all these abuses and from charlatans who come and talk about bribery or no bribery, and they don't know anything about the law. So my advice to Nigeria is that we either go back to the 1999 provision that Court of Appeals should be the terminal ends rather than the Supreme Court. Then there will be no more talk of overworking in the Supreme Court.
Thank you, sir. As is often said, justice delayed is justice denied. And you've eloquently put how the political system and our election cases are burdening the system and burdening the Supreme Court, and therefore delaying justice for normal, everyday Nigerians. Now, when we talk about judicial reform, because you've spoken about corruption, but people often talk about corruption on the bench or corruption in the judiciary, and we've had cases in the past where this has come to light. Now, do you believe that we also need to reform the way that people are appointed to the bench from the very beginning, not elevated as they go on, but their original appointments to the bench? Or do you believe that the characters of those who sit on the bench now are unblemished?
You see, it's neither here or there. If you take the American system, under which we pretend, appointment of judges are made by the president himself. Federal High Court judges are appointed by the president, Supreme Court judges, and you can see now that Donald Trump, within 3 or 4 years of his first term, appointed 3 people to the Supreme Court. And you see what he's doing there. So if it's by appointment, it has its dangers. But the Nigerian system is based on a system that is, very, very clear that there is somebody who can recommend, somebody who can appoint, and somebody who can confirm. So it's a tripartite system. For instance, the only fear I have is that whatever you say, in the states today, governors are the appointing, it's very, very sad to say. Governors today appoint judges, even if they want to tell us that the judiciary is independent. It is not. Because he who appoints, dictates a lot of things. So appointment by itself is not a solution to Nigerians' problem. The solution to Nigerians' problem is that we Nigerians ourselves, we are the culprits. If you show me any system in Nigeria today, outside the judiciary, that is not bastardized by corruption, I will hail Nigeria well. There is nowhere. Everything a Nigerian has a hand in, governance, judiciary, we dilute it with corruption. So nobody should stop shouting judiciary is corrupt, is corrupt. Every Nigerian is a corrupt man. I am corrupt, you are corrupt, and the system is corrupt. And it's the system that allows this corruption to thrive. Look at inflation in Nigeria today. My doctors recommended me to go and buy an antibiotic. I got to about 2 years ago when I bought it, it was 3,000 pounds, naira. When I got there now, they said it is 18,000, inflation. When the same, this thing was to be replaced, I went to the same chemist shop. From 18,000 that I bought 2 weeks ago, they said it's now 25,000. These are Nigerians who are killing Nigerians. Nigerians killing Nigerians. If your cook wants to go to the market, they'll start drumming it in your ear. Tomato now is 1,000, oh, this thing. And that's what is happening in Nigeria, corruption, corruption. If you bring the Pope to Nigeria today to be president, within a year, I assure you, he will have married or had a girlfriend. You see, it is the system. Don't blame anybody in Nigeria today. Blame the system and blame yourself. Tell me which area there is no corruption in Nigeria. No area. So many fake drugs in Nigeria now. Fake drugs. Are we not the ones importing them? Is the dollar rising every day? So my opinion is that we should stop blaming the judiciary for delays. It is the system. I've just told you that the question of the Supreme Court delay is a self-inflicted injury. The Chief Justice of Nigeria asked the legislatures to amend the Constitution to allow Supreme Court to be in charge of in 1999 or 2003, in which I participated, Plateau Darius case. We didn't take so much time. We didn't go to the Supreme Court. We all ended in the Court of Appeal as the final court.
Well,
so let the Supreme Court hierarchy now sit down, reduce their load. But people will say, no, they are making money. It's because, and then you'll be talking about how the Senate president became a senator without contesting an election. Well, that is the devil in us Nigerians. So let's clean ourselves of this corruption.
All right, then, as you rightfully mentioned, we're talking about the separation of powers as well as the CJN's powers herself. The judiciary's independence is crucial for democracy. Yes, yet it is often perceived as being influenced by the executive branch. So what would you say to Justice c0rruption to help her navigate this relationship to ensure that judiciary remains an independent arm of the government? And also on the other hand, there have been calls to reduce the extensive powers vested in the CJN to prevent abuse. Do you think it's necessary to review the current structure? And if so, what changes would you recommend?
Well, I don't quite get your question. What sort of structuring for the Supreme Court? Is it what you're asking me?
No, I'm talking about the CJN.
Or the judiciary as a whole?
The judiciary as a whole. The judiciary as a whole.
What?
And the judiciary as a whole. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The judiciary as a whole, as I told you, it will be foolhardiness for us to say, oh, we are independent. I have just told you that every judge in every state in Nigeria is appointed by the governor. No matter how brilliant you are in practice, no matter how highly rated you are, if you don't have people seeing the governor, then they'll tell them, send us 3 names. Send us 3 names. Then the governor will now pick one. The governor is appointing. He who appoints can sack you anytime. But only we are lucky that we now say, even if he appoints, he cannot sack you. But you see, the whole thing is wrong from the beginning. The other alternative is the American system, which I told you. The president appoints. But that's a politician. And you can see the trait of a politician from what Donald Trump did. In the 4 years he was president, he was able to appoint 3 judges into the Supreme Court. See the damage he has done within those 4 years. See the damage he has done within those 4 years. So what I'm going to say is that this constitution we are operating, the 1999 constitution, is the problem we have. It is not a constitution derived from the people. So don't let us tell ourselves that we, the people of Nigeria, own the constitution. No. Let a new constitution, a constitutional conference be called, a new constitution that will reflect all what you are saying now, so that we will see from our past mistakes and we'll be able to have a constitution that will be acceptable to the people.
Okay.
All right, then. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time and analysis. If you can hear me, sir, we appreciate your time and analysis on the morning show. Yes, thank you so much. We've come to the end of the interview, and like I said, we appreciate